Our Region's Business is sponsored by PNC for the achiever in you. Welcome to Our Region's Business with your host, Bill Flanagan.
Well, today on Our Region's Business, Pennsylvania is getting ready to spread some cheer next year with hundreds of millions of dollars of investment in its transportation infrastructure. Today we're focusing not only on the price tag, but on what residents of the Commonwealth can expect in terms of reliable infrastructure and stable public transit service. The investment had been championed by an unusual coalition of business, labor, and nonprofit groups from across Pennsylvania. Lawmakers approved the bill and Governor Tom Corbett signed it just before the Thanksgiving break. Well, it certainly gave Barry Schokes something to be thankful for last month. The Secretary of Transportation joins us via satellite from Harrisburg, and welcome.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you having me.
Well, let's start with what we're going to get for the money, and then we'll talk in a minute or so about how we're going to pay for it. But what are you going to be able to do next year that you might not have been able to do had this bill not passed?
Well, I think you touched on in your intro, Bill. First of all, reliable transit service for Pittsburgh. If this bill had not passed, you would have seen cuts to transit service. Some of what we call the orphan lines, including the Acton Heritage Line, Pittsburgh would have terminated service. Statewide, that would have amounted to about 50,000 riders a month being taken away, their service being taken away, which would have been devastating. The Port Authority itself, we probably would have endured about a 30% cut in service, a revert to the old labor contract. So from a transit standpoint, it's significant in terms of maintaining public transportation service in Pittsburgh and throughout the Commonwealth. Beyond that, on the highway and bridge side, it's going to enable us to start make a positive headway on our bridge problem. As you know, we have a very old bridge system, 25,000 bridges with an average age of 51 years, and we need to make a significant investment to stay ahead of that curve that's coming at us of aging bridges. So the residents are going to see improved safety by virtue of better paving on the roads, intersection improvements, bridge improvements starting next year, and as this program builds, you'll see capacity relief. So it's a significant bill for the future of the economy and safety of Pennsylvanians.
Given all the uncertainty about whether the bill would pass, I know PennDOT had begun to move forward on weight restricting bridges. It looked like that could become a serious economic issue for the state.
Absolutely. The reality of the situation is concrete, steel, it doesn't get better in age any more than we do. And without sufficient resources, the 40,000 miles of road we own, 25,000 bridges, no one ever suggested to me we should take out 5,000 miles of road off the system and get rid of it. So we collectively own it, and we have to maintain it. And as you said, without resources, I was left with the unfortunate position of having to start gradually shutting down the system. And in order to maintain safety, the way we did that was start to introduce weight restrictions on bridges to slow down the rate of deterioration.
Wow, and you talk about shutting down the system. When you're talking about your transportation network, you're really talking about shutting down the lifeblood of the economy.
That's right. I mean, this is purely an economic issue beyond safety. The businesses that work here, located here, employ people, move goods through the Commonwealth. They rely on our public transportation systems, rely on our highways and bridges to get their products around the state. Even people who don't drive, if you're buying anything from the grocery store, that product got here from the farm to the market on our highway system. So it is clearly the lifeblood of our economy, and frankly, without investment, we were going to be at an economic competitive disadvantage to neighboring states.
Let's talk about the price tag, almost $2.5 billion. It's a big number. How are we going to pay for it?
Well, it's a series of user fees gradually introduced over a 5-year period. I've often said we're a lot like a utility company. If you have an electric bill or water bill at home, you pay for access to the system and then you pay for how much you use it. For us at PennDOT, your access to the system is your driver's license and registration fees. Your consumption charge, or how much you use the systems, how much gasoline you purchase, meaning how many miles you drive. So none of those rates have been changed since 1997, 16 years. So what we're doing is gradually increasing those rates. We are uncapping the oil company franchise tax, which is one of the components of our fuel tax. It was intended to be inflationary. It was capped at $1.25 a gallon back in the 1980s. We're going to gradually uncap that over a 5-year period, and at the same time eliminate the 12-cent flat tax at the pump. We also will see gradual increases to registration and license fees and other fees that people pay relative to access to the system. Again, they haven't been changed in 16 years, and yet we certainly have been experienced increased costs and, frankly, less revenue because of more fuel-efficient vehicles. So the users will be paying for it, and they're the ones who are going to benefit from it.
It's the big question everybody has is, what's this really going to mean to the price of a gallon of gas at the pump? Is there any way to predict?
Well, there really isn't, because right now, if you look across the state, you'll see a fluctuation of 20, 25 cents a gallon. And by this being at the oil company franchise tax, meaning the wholesale level, we don't know how much is going to be passed on. You've probably read and heard all kinds of estimates. It could be as much as 28 cents 5 years from now. What we have said, just to relate it perhaps in a weekly cost, is worst case, when all these fees get in place and if it's fully passed on to the motorists, the average driver, somebody who drives about 12,000 miles a year, will pay about $2.50 a week more than they're paying today 5 years from now. That's less than 1 gallon of gas. And in exchange for that, you're going to see a dramatic improvement in the surface of our roads, easing of congestion, and the safety of our bridges. A small price to pay for that benefit.
Let me ask you about the benefit, because we've talked a lot how this will keep the current system in place. Do we get anything new out of this investment?
Absolutely.
New roads, new ramps, new bridges, or is it strictly the status quo?
It is not strictly maintenance. The first few years, you're going to see a heavy emphasis on maintenance, but you will see next year us restarting studies and plans that have been mothballed for years about adding capacity and adding lanes. So absolutely, this level of funding will mean we'll start adding capacity and building new facilities and expanding facilities, something that's sorely needed in our urban and suburban areas around the state.
So you think here in the Southwest we're going to see that kind of investment 4 or 5 years from now as a result of this?
Some sooner. We'll start on the Turnpike, for example, we'll start work on the looking at the Southern Beltway perhaps from 22 to 79. We've got Freedom Road in Pittsburgh. You'll see additional projects that we'll start moving on. Some of those might not start construction for 4, 5, 6 years because we have to get through the design phases, but you will start to see activity on them, and as you say, a bill of this size enables us to do that, and we sorely need to do so.
Well, that's exciting. It's an important step forward for all of Pennsylvania. PennDOT Secretary Barry Shoap, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Bill.
And next up, what the transportation investment is going to mean to our regions and Pennsylvania's competitiveness. Stay with us.